I wanted to take some time and just talk about the natural immunity saga and how the information on this topic has changed.
That is the right
quite a bit.
word.
Yes.
It is a saga.
Yes.
Where we were at in the beginning of this entire experience is miles away from where we are now. And I think we have so much more better data that it should inform us to make different decisions, draft policies that actually make sense and do have statistical backing for them. So in regards to the natural immunity argument, I think that's been something that has been very seldom discussed, at least publicly, as in what's the data? How valid are the studies? What's the quality of these type of things? Because everybody likes to mention it, but I think a lot of us haven't necessarily, lifted the hood and taken a glimpse at really what's going on here. So the most credible study that I was able to find came out of Israel. It had tens of thousands of participants, and it was actually a study that was cited by Dr. Marty McCary, who is a Johns Hopkins doctor. He's also a regular Fox News guest. You might have seen him on Tucker's show. And some of the data in here is absolutely stunning. And it's something I think that actually should make us feel a little bit better about what our position is. And also, I think, is a direct rebuke to the hysterical leftist policies that want to lock everything down and force people to take a medicine against their will.
Yeah.
So I think some of the stuff I just want to mention, some of the big bullet points. And I want to lead with the fact that this study has not been independently peer reviewed. So we're going to have to rely on the data that they provided us. But they first looked at two groups of people, one that had received a vaccine, the Pfizer vaccine, against people that had contracted COVID during 2020. And that was a group of about 46,035 people. The single most interesting data point to come out of that was that vaccinated individuals were actually 7 times more likely to have a symptomatic COVID infection than the people that got COVID naturally over the course of 2020. And they actually conducted a separate study where they had 16,215 participants looking at the Delta variant specifically, and the numbers were even more crushing, where people who had received a vaccine were 27 times more likely to have a symptomatic COVID infection. So in regards to the Alpha variant, the Delta variant, the data is clear that the natural immunity that's conferred upon you by overcoming the virus actually is far superior to the vaccine immunity that the medicine confers. So I think that's something that's really important when we're thinking about extrapolating this point and thinking about herd immunity.
Yeah.
Because what do the Democrat politicians always say? Why are we mandating the vaccines? We've got to get to herd immunity. If we can just all pull together and go in the same direction, then we can get to herd immunity and we can all hold hands and sing Kumbaya and move on from the pandemic. But the bottom line is, and this was a point that Dr. McCary made, we're probably actually well on our way to natural immunity herd immunity with a combination of natural immunity and vaccine immunity merging together into one very protected population. Because we've had over 44 million people in this country get infected with the coronavirus. What that means is we've got 44 million people that have a very strong level of natural immunity. And when you merge that number with the 150 million shots that have already been administered, that actually backs what we're seeing now, which is the numbers are dropping dramatically because we are actually much closer towards this ephemeral herd immunity that they like to talk about. So my question to you two is, why has there been so little oxygen in the news environment devoted to natural immunity? Like, is it because the vaccine manufacturers are pressuring people? Like, what do you think it is that they just don't really want to talk about this topic?
Well, I think their narrative for so long has centered around the vaccine and how everyone needs to get vaccinated. So if they were to back off of that now and say, maybe if you've had the virus, you don't need the vaccine, everyone would question what they have to say. Everyone would question Fauci. People would question the CDC and all these doctors that CNN and MSNBC have on all the time. There would be questions, rightfully so. I think people are starting to question anyways. And then I think you have to think about the profits of big pharma too. Think about how much money these vaccine manufacturers are making off of the vaccine mandate. Biden said 99% of Americans need to be vaccinated before we reach herd immunity and we can get back to normal. But That's absurd, but think about how much money those vaccine manufacturers will make. Oh, and 3 months after you get your vaccine, you need a booster shot. There's more money in our pocket. So I think if they were to compromise on that, it would hurt the vaccine manufacturers. It would hurt the government. It would hurt all the pundits in the media. They would look like fools. So they're going to keep peddling this idea that everyone has to get vaccinated and natural immunity all of a sudden is just non-existent. They're going to ignore 100 years of science just to push their agenda.
What do you think, Josh? Why are they burying natural immunity?
Well, I think Joey's probably right. Yeah, I think you're probably completely right. They got super invested in it early on. The impulse of the left is to do something. The impulse of conservatives is to wait and conserve, wait and see.
Right.
I had a friend who used to say that the difference between conservatives and liberals is that conservatives won't destroy something until they've got something better to rebuild with. Whereas liberals they tend more toward action, even if the action is maybe not superior to the thing it's replacing. And the impulse with something like this, especially with the way the media hyped it, was, oh, good heavens, we've got to do something. It's we could have tens of millions of people in the U.S. dying. And so we end up with Operation Warp Speed. And let's remember, the vaccines were horrible as long as Trump was in office.